Imagine working 71 hours a week for more than 15 hours a day. This is the life of Maria. Maria is an immigrant from the Philippines who has come to work in Hong Kong in order to make a new life for herself and support her family back home. She is experiencing working conditions that put her in emotional distress and threaten her well-being. Too many migrant workers just like Maria experience the same and even worse in Hong Kong every day, but they shouldn't have to, and no one should. Fair Employment Agency CEO and co-founder Scott Stiles sought to eliminate the dehumanization of these migrant workers in not only Hong Kong, but also the world. Team Hawaii shares this goal. Our philosophy, Hanao Ho, or rebirth in Hawaiian, aims to help the FEA make the world a safe place where migrant workers like Maria can be reborn in foreign countries and make a better life for themselves. Aloha. My name is Victoria Kashiwai, and I'm presenting with my colleagues Kelly Chinen, Natalie Kwan, and Zihao Liu. Together, we are Team Hawaii from the University of Hawaii at Manoa's Scheidler College of Business and are proudly representing the United States of America. We as Team Hawaii aim to help the FEA empower migrant employees through knowledge and choice while establishing a new ethical international standard for employees. But how will the FEA transform the international migration industry towards ethical practices in Hong Kong and the world? We at Team Hawaii have come up with the short-term empower strategy and the long-term establish strategy to help the FEA reach its goal of eliminating unethical treatment of migrant workers. Employees will be empowered with a focus on expanding the existing fair trading centers and honest jobs, while the FEA works to establish a new employment standard through growth in Hong Kong with new branches. Our empower and establish strategies will produce outcomes of an increase in migrant worker knowledge pre-departure and a decrease in illegal agency behavior in Hong Kong. Each strategy has a projected return on investment of 43% Empower strategy and 67.4% for the Established strategy, which will be repurposed by the FEA to continue its mission to protect migrant workers. As I mentioned earlier, Team Hawaii's philosophy is rebirth, or Hanao Ho in Hawaiian. The FEA has already placed thousands of workers and has become one of Hong Kong's largest domestic worker employment agencies. However, through Team Hawaii's Empower and Establish strategies, the FEA will be able to expand the efforts they've made in Hong Kong and improve employee experiences all over the world. Our strategies put the FEA in a place where they can continue to be transparent with employers and employees, elaborate on the innovations they have already implemented, and guarantee the long-term success of all parties involved, but most of all, people like Maria.
One of the biggest issues that Fair Employment Agency is facing is how will they transform the migrant industry towards an ethical practice in Hong Kong? What can they do to eliminate unethical agency practices to help domestic workers while expanding their businesses and helping Hong Kong to move towards an ethical future? The foreign domestic workers industry is a big part of Hong Kong, contributing to 12.6 billion USD to their economy, and it is expected to grow due to the aging populations. Agencies are the backbones of this industry, with 1,400 agencies in Hong Kong, but sadly, 70% of these agencies engage in unethical and illegal behaviors. The EFA fights to become the ethical nonprofit organization in this environment. Mr. Stiles has a goal to tackle the problem of exploitation and debt bondage that plague the migrant workers in Asia. The FEA utilizes their strength in ethical practices with their ethical fair employment models, their transparency pricings, as well as their technology to drive their growth to become the ethical standards of this industry. These are important factors that we consider for our strategies. There are also two situational trends that we have to fix for this industry. Foreign domestic workers are unskilled and easily exploitable. This is a problem we will address in our Empower strategy. The large foreign domestic industry is hard to regulate, leading to unethical agencies, affecting both the domestic workers as well as the employers. Unethical practices like long work hours as well as abuse, and as well as illegal fees creating debt bondages, leading to modern day slaveries. To answer these questions, Team Hawaii has considered the options you have provided.
While franchising offers fast scalability and growth, there is much concern for new franchises to adhere to FEA's ethical standards and the ability to monitor these new branches. There is simply no way to ensure quality management at such high rates, making this option unrealistic at this time. Pursuing organic growth through business branch extension offered opportunities to reach unreached aspects of the migrant workers' experience and increase FEA employee satisfaction. Further, expanding the FTC and honest job system in the Philippines would mitigate illegal employment practices in many migrant workers' home countries. The pursuit of these two business solutions to disrupt the current migrant worker industry standards can be summarized as empower and establish. Rebirth of the migrant worker industry and the lives of millions pursuing this path requires innovation, transparency, and a focus on long-term success. Our Empower strategy will expand the FTC and honest jobs in the Philippines using technology and connecting FEA's migrant employees and employers. And our Establish strategy will create organic growth in Hong Kong in the second and third phase, utilizing certification and consulting services and a new branch with the FEF to re-establish the industry standard. To better understand the Empower and Establish strategy, here is the current fair employment structure with our strategies to implement change using technology and new branches of the organization. In phase one, in red and on the left, the Empower half of the strategy, migrant workers in the Philippines will be given more choice in their future employer and educated pre-departure through FTC and honest job expansion. Phase two, in blue and on the right, establishes the FAA, or Fair Agency Alliance, and its fair certification process to logically define a higher standard of ethics and business practices for agencies. Finally, phase three and the second half of the Established strategy offers a new revenue stream for FEA while offering new opportunities for employers to feel satisfied as they collaborate with agencies to pursue better business practices. I will now explore our Empower strategy and the first phase, with Kelly and Victoria sharing about our Established strategy that involves the second and third phase. Let's understand the current situation in the Philippines and its fair recruitment model, as seen in Exhibit 1 on page 11 in the Sending Employment Agency and Training Center steps. The Fair Training Center and Honest Jobs purpose is to pair workers and educate them before departure towards a second life through online modules and coaching. As a whole, a moderate 43% of individuals in the Philippines have access to the internet. As referred to in the Fair Recruitment Model on page 11, we notice the following gaps in the pre-departure process for migrant workers. First, employees lack personal connection with the employer. Second, due to this lack of communication, workers lack choice and understanding with their employer, creating an asymmetrical balance of information between the FEA, worker, and employer. Finally, with an isolated training process, workers can feel alone and unable to find community until they settle into their new lives abroad. These workers are leaving their families and loved ones for a new life, a second chance for hope. And yet, in these Sending Employment Agency and Training Center steps, the FEA fails to give these workers a say in their employer or even meet them before leaving the comfort of their home country. Team Hawaii wants to empower these workers looking to be reborn in a new country through communication, education, and technology. In phase 1 of 3 in the Empower and Establish strategy, Zoom platforms will be further developed in the FTC to partner with FEA and Hong Kong agencies, while Salesforce CRM platforms will be translated from the FEA into honest jobs. Zoom platforms will be further utilized in the following ways. First, video chats will establish a relationship between the FEA worker and employees. This connection is missing in the current firm model, making workers feel commoditized and lacking personal connection. Second, Zoom will connect other workers preparing to go abroad, creating cohorts of workers that share the same concern, experiences, and intense care for their families. Honest Jobs will implement Salesforce CRM and reporting as it is currently being used by the FEA in Hong Kong. CRM technology will assist employees in managing relationships and use historical data to improve pairing accuracy and efficiency in managing pairing processes. To understand how Zoom integrations will empower the migrant worker process, here is Maria. She has just passed the recruitment stage in the FAIR model and is working with the Sending Employment Agency and FTC. Here she meets with her employer and the FEA after confirming her employer abroad. If she meets her employer and finds the relationship to be strained, her or the employer has the choice to find a new pairing. After meeting her employer, Maria meets with the others planning their careers abroad in a cohort who share the same excitement and concerns as she does. After Maria travels abroad, she meets her employer face-to-face for the first time and quickly settles in with the help of her newfound community. Using the Salesforce platforms in Honest Jobs, an employee such as Maria will share her information with the Honest Jobs company, which is then recorded in Salesforce. Salesforce continues to assist in taking care of these relationships, such as creating reminders for monthly check-ins, processing large amounts of employee data as it occurs, and other incoming tasks. The mass collection of this data and historical trends further improves the reporting and pairing processes for new pairings and its recommendations. With the implementation of telecommunication and Salesforce, the phase one as empower half of our strategy involves the following impacts. First, workers will be empowered through choice and community. They will possess more knowledge pre-departure for a fair and informed journey towards new life. Employee and employer pairings will be more accurate and efficient for a cost-effective change. Finally, thousands more, just like Maria, will begin their new life abroad without feeling misinformed or commoditized. Team Hawaii's philosophy of hanao ho, or rebirth, echoes the FTC's motto. It's not just your job, it's your life. Our situation affords the opportunity for a rebirth of fair, equal, and dignified hope and dream to live.
So before we introduce our established strategy, we wanted to briefly mention the current landscape. Currently, the FEA has established a fair hiring pledge, which is signed by over 20 multinational companies such as Barclays and KPMG. Second, as Z mentioned, the domestic worker agency itself. There are 1,400 agencies in Hong Kong alone. Additionally, the illegal behavior that is occurring is an issue. A study showed that over 70% of agencies in Hong Kong engage in illegal behavior when placing domestic workers. Following Natalie's Empower strategy, we understand that your long-term goal is to transform the industry. With all the issues I have mentioned earlier, you cannot do it by yourself, but you have the competitive advantage to make this happen. However, you need the assistance of other institutions and organizations. So at Team Hawaii, we have come up with the Fair Agency Alliance and Fair Certification. So what are these two new aspects? Like shown in the structure overview, the FAA is created to establish credibility for hiring agencies locally and internationally. We decided to structure the organization similarly to the FEF and FEA, where the FAA Certification and Regulation Board, or CRB, will both have their own board of directors. Now we want to further dive into each aspect. The FAA will be serving as the governing body. Furthermore, the FAA will be the ones overseeing the certifications and aim to work towards becoming recognized within the industry and the world. However, why do we need the certification? We want to be proactive, and this is just the beginning. By creating an alliance with the Hong Kong government and labor union in the FAA, we will be able to further eliminate unethical and illegal agency behaviors. Through this alliance, we hope to move towards creating legislation that will require the certification for agencies in the future. This is highly feasible, as you already have the backbone and ethical advantage that you have built up over the years.
Continuing the established strategy is Phase 3, an introduction for fair consulting. FEA CEO and co-founder Mr. Stiles disagreed with activities aimed at bringing down other agencies. Fair consulting allows unethical employment agencies a chance to be reborn through this new process and become an accredited employment agency by obtaining the FAIR certification. This will be done through a combination of training modules to catch agencies up with the standards of the fair recruitment model and live consultants that can provide more in-depth recommendations for agencies seeking the FAIR certification. Fair consulting has 3 training modules. Business practices will ensure an understanding of the fair recruitment model. Organizational change will focus on how agencies can benefit employers they work with, migrant workers they are being matched to employers, and the implementation of a transparency audit. The first 2 modules will be focused towards the CEO and other higher-ups of the agencies, while completion of the Ethical Code of Conduct module will be for all agency employees in order to ensure an agency-wide understanding of ethics.
So how does the established strategy process look from an external point of view? Here is DW Agency, who is trying to get the FAIR certification. They will look into the certification criteria, and once understanding it, they will go to FAIR Consulting, where they will be paired with a consultant, in this case, Angela. Angela will advise them to complete all the training modules, and once completed, the agency will continue to work with Angela to finalize the necessary adjustments to fit the criteria. When the entire process is complete, DW Agency will be able to send the application to the CRB. If the CRB approves the application, DW agency will gain their FAIR certification. And if not, they will have to go back and work with a consultant. Through our established strategy, it will generate the following impacts. First, FEA will be able to reduce illegal behavior due to their certification process. Second, through the consulting branch, FEA will be able to educate other agencies on how to operate ethically. Lastly, with the development of this strategy, they will be able to generate a revenue of 5 million Hong Kong dollars. With the integration of the established strategy, they will be able to further progress towards the goal of mitigating illegal interests in the industry.
So in order to measure the success of our empowered and established strategy explained earlier by my team members Natalie, Kelly, and Victoria, Team Hawaii has projected the following revenue. The Empower strategy will result in an increase in donations from employers of 244,000 Hong Kong dollars from the increase in training, attracting more workers as well as employers. The revenue from the established strategy will be created by the additional revenue source of consultings for other agencies, coming to be about 7.6 million Hong Kong dollars. Both revenues are over the course of 3 years. We also want to ensure you that we keep the cost of our structure in mind. We expect FEA to have a cost of 169,000 Hong Kong dollars for their Empower strategy. This cost is breaking down into 78% increase in cost of training in the Honest Job as well as the Fair Job Center, 14% in purchasing of technologies, equipments for the CRM as well as the training, and then 7% to market our additional efforts to workers as well as employers. The established strategy will have a cost of 4.5 million HKD, broken down into 60% regulatory adjustment costs to push for the ethical changes in the industry, 22% in employees to certify and regulate the agency for the FAA, and 18% in certification development for the FAA. And based on our revenue and cost, by subtracting the two, we were able to calculate an economic value created. For our Empower strategy, we expect to create a value of 74,000 HKD with a return on investment of 44%. For our established strategy, we expect to create a value of 3 million HKD with a return on investment of 67.4%.
Here they discussed risks and mitigations posed by our Empower and Established strategy, with focus on our second noted risk in which legal and illegal agencies are unreceptive to change and receiving certification. Allying the FAA and its certification with Hong Kong government and other companies who have taken the pledge will create a sense of immediate urgency to comply with these governing parties. Further, the FAA will push for lobbying, legislation, and legal consequences for agencies who continue to work illegally in the future. Further considerations included other aspects of FEA branches, such as their Fair Hong Kong app. However, we wanted to focus on solutions that were easily replicable and expandable towards other countries, such as the FAA certifications.
With Natalie's Empower strategy and my established strategy, how will we be implementing them? We believe the Empower strategy will take 1 year for R&D and technological integration preparation. Once the integration is running, the FEA and its foundation will be able to increase revenue by 8% in their first year of operation. After 1 year of operating, we hope to begin the established strategy. During the R&D process, not only will the process and certification will be worked on, but also finding agencies that align with FEA's goal as well. By 2026, this strategy will create a revenue of 5 million Hong Kong dollars. Overall, what we presented to you today shows how the FEA can tackle problems facing the industry. We came here with the objective to help empower the business by expanding their Philippine sector and establish new business standards through the agencies and consulting. Here at Team Hawaii, we value the philosophy of rebirth, or hanaho, along with our beliefs in transparency, innovation, and long-term success. Without question, at Team Hawaii, we are committed and dedicated to assisting you in your goal to displace illegal interests within the industry. The value of our solutions goes beyond the economic value. For Maria and many others like her, our solution affords the opportunity for a rebirth, fair, equal, and dignified opportunity to hope, to dream, and to live. Mahalo and thank you.
Thank you. Now it's time for the Q&A session. The 15 minutes countdown starts now. Let's hear the first question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, team. Always very interesting to hear your solutions. A couple of questions from me, if you don't mind. I was not very clear on how the Zoom will allow the migrant workers to come together and to meet before they depart to Hong Kong. And I was not very clear on the revenue stream for Empower strategy. If you don't mind to explain those, it would be highly appreciated.
Of course, to answer your first question on how Zoom allows others to connect in a cohort, I'd like to refer to this consumer experience path. So we have Maria, who has already met with her employer and the FEA facilitators online via Zoom. Following this, and in the training sections of her process with the FTC, she will also have the opportunity to connect with other migrant employees who are also in the FT training workshops at that time. So through Zoom, she will be able to connect in a large-scale Zoom meeting and have breakout rooms and cohort discussions to prepare and really take the emotional leap towards her new career in a new country. And I'll have my other teammates answer the second half of your question that refers to the revenue streams.
So before we actually finish with this question, so the idea is once they are recruited, they will go to a training center, or they will be in their home and they will need to access Zoom and meet the other migrant workers that are in the same cohort via Zoom and get training from FEA?
Yes, so if we can refer to the first document in the appendix or exhibit 1, we can see that after recruitment, the migrant workers are then put into the Fair Training Center and also the employment agencies. And so at this time, when all of the migrant workers are going to be doing training through the FTC in the Philippines, it is either online through a workshop or they have in-person coaching as well. So the migrant worker has the option to either go into the FTC branch in the Philippines and connect over Zoom there, or have the Zoom call as an additional asset to their online modules.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And then to answer your second question about the revenue stream, we know that we're not changing the process as much, but we expect to have an increase in revenue due to the additional trainings provided for technologies, attracting more workers, as well as employers who want a more tech-savvy employee. So we just, based on the revenue donations that FAEA has in 2019, excuse me, and then we just increased it by 8%, which we think is really possible because from the previous year, they were able to increase their donations by about 35%. So we're just increasing it by a little, but due to the attraction of the technology. And then here's the cost.
The 244,000 Hong Kong dollars. Where is that coming from? So I understand the donation. You are assuming that the donation will increase because of the enhancement that you are planning to do. But the additional source of revenue, where is it coming from?
From more employers hiring more employees, because we're offering more trainings to attract more employees because we're increasing the facilities quality in the Philippine side to attract more employees. I just cut off for a second.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, thank you.
Hi, can you can go first, it's fine.
Oh, yes, sorry, Minnie, we talk at the same time. Zane, I just want to ask you the question stated on this slide. With this revenue of 244,000, what's your assessment? Is that low or high to the current organization? Is that a reasonable revenue expectation by extending a strategy? Is that worth, based on this much of return, to implement, to proceed with the empowerment strategy you propose?
I believe this is a reasonable ROI for them, especially with their organization size right now when we look towards their revenue model as well as their financial statements. I believe this 244,000 increase in revenue will be beneficial for them for expansion in Philippines, as well as this model is really replicable and then expandable into other regions as well, especially into Indonesia, which is the second largest market for the foreign domestic workers. We can just copy this model and then implement it in Indonesia, which is once we're established in Philippines.
So if I quote your earlier number saying that the return for this strategy is like 43%, what would be the total investment you plan to put in this for this strategy? And and then what you also mentioned, there will be research and development R&D part. So how much do you plan to put it in, and then why you think that's a reasonable estimation?
So our estimation is based on what their current spendings are. So I looked over their financial statements, especially for their honest job as well as their fair training centers, which is the two aspects we're gonna adjust. So based on the honest job center, is their lower cost, which is about 23%. Their fair job training center is about 26% of their cost. So we're just increasing the costs of both parties by about 2% for honest jobs and then 4% for the fair training centers. And then we also have other costs incurring for the equipments we're going to purchase for the CRM systems as well as the technologies trainings. So we expect to have a 10% cost for purchasing of those equipments. Of course, if you're doing all of this, if you're not marketing yourself, you're not going to have those employees coming in and knowing that you're providing these trainings. So we're of course allocating 5% of the revenue to the marketing as well.
Thank you.
Hi, hello. It's Mimi here. So thank you very much for the presentation. I got a few questions. One, it's the first one will be about the certification that you just proposed. So I think it's a good idea, but I want to understand a bit more about your thoughts around that in terms of the ongoing monitoring. So after I get the point that you will certify the local agencies to have a cert, but how do you monitoring and also ongoing to make sure that they will continue to be up to standard? And have you factored in the cost inside? Because the cost just now you show is pretty brief, so I cannot see that. That's the first question. The second one, so can I, in terms of the strategy that you're continuing, so can I assume that you will continue to run FEA as a non-profit organization? Is that what you're targeting for? The second question. The third question is also about the donations, which I think Raluca have also touched on. So can you drill a little bit deeper or let me know in terms of the extra donations? I saw from one of the slides you're aiming from employers, if you are, or if you're not anyway. So what are the donation source and how do you convince them? I understand that you have been doing a lot of enhancement, but in terms of the strategy, do you have any ideas on how you can convince them to actually provide more donations to FEA?
First, thank you for your question. So I would like to address the first part of your question regarding how we will regulate the certification. So as we mentioned in our strategy, we will be having the CRB, also known as a Certification and Regulation Board. So this will be the organization that will not only look over applications, but also be able to regulate through these three criteria on this slide. So with that, we will hope to monitor and continue to monitor agencies that have gained the FAIR certification so they do not slip beyond the standards. And I would like to pass it on to my colleagues for the rest of the questions.
So to continue that question, if you could go to the appendix first for the cost. So, sorry. Yes, right there. So because we know that the certification and regulations have to be ongoing, we have to hire employees to foresee that certification, as well as having a lawyer to oversee that everything is going all right. So for our costs, we will have 8 employees have 8 regulatory employees for certification as well as regulatory, and then one of the lawyers will oversee all the certifications, make sure that everything is correct and that nothing is being exploited or nothing is being audited incorrectly, and that transparency is overall. So this is our cost for our strategy. So we'll have the employee costs, regulatory costs, as well as the certification creation costs for the with a total of $4.5 million in the beginning. And then the cost of the employees are over the course of 3 years as well. And then the second question, could I ask you to repeat your second question?
It's about the strategy. Would you continue to run FEA to be an NGO? Not NGO, sorry, not for profit organization, sorry.
So we will plan to run it as an NGO, as keep running it as a nonprofit organizations, because as a nonprofit organizations, we are able to show that we are caring for the employers as well as the employees, as well as we can direct all of our incomes and then our return on investments on further projects, as well as pushing for regulatory changes, especially in lobbying the government to change the foreign domestic workers policies to become better. And then to address your third question about the donations, of course, changes are going to be targeted towards the workers, the domestic workers, but we will also market to the employers as well, because once there's a little bit of technology difference between Hong Kong, who is a little bit of technology advanced, and then people who are more tech savvy, especially the younger generations. Even the older generations are more tech savvy. They know how to use a computer, the cell phones, and everything else. But in Philippines, they're less tech savvy. They have the phones penetration is only about 31%, with the internet penetration about 43%. So we want to train them to be more tech savvy, just in case, or once they move to Hong Kong, there's a lot of technologies they're going to deal with, especially within the households when they're doing with cleaning, with their daily work. So with that training, they're able to increase their efficiency as well.
And
so
just to briefly add on, oh, I'm sorry, Z, you can go ahead and finish up. Just to briefly add on to what Z had just mentioned, these additional revenues, based on our research, we were able to find, and based on the documentation provided, we found out that in Hong Kong, over 70% of employers are willing to pay a premium to guarantee that these employees have been ethically sourced. And so because they have been ethically sourced, we guarantee that return.
Okay, thank you. That's all for me now. To see if Luca, can you have any follow-up questions?
Thanks for your answers. I got one more question regarding your FAIR certificate. And then, so your plan is trying to make it regulatory, mandatory, or you want, so you're nodding and saying that is you want to make that regulatory, mandatory, so everyone who going to do this business needs to have your certificate, and that will guarantee you a revenue by issuing that certificate. And then you doing that, you will do government lobbying. What will be the risk for you? To have you considered to proceed with that approach? That will be my first question, because I want to get more source of what do you think, why the government will like to give you that authority to issue the certificate rather than they're doing themselves, and there will be certain business interest out there as an external provider.
So for our FAA agencies, we want to pursue the lobbying to become the regulatory law for the agency, the foreign domestic agencies. But we know that for sure, we know that from the documents that the agencies are really hard to regulate due to the size of the industry, especially with 1,400 agencies operating within the environments. The government is having trouble regulating them. And then this is why there's a lot of illegal behavior, especially with the fees and then the debt bondages. So by offering that FAA as well as the certifications, we're able to work with the government, especially because the FAA has already worked with the government. So it's a little bit easier for them to get that lobbying as well. So, sorry. In order to,
Okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, now the judges will stay in the room to deliberate. Students, we will place you back to the waiting room and bring you back in for the feedback session in a few minutes.